We are going to have two presenters today. Maybe you can go to the next slide, Alex. We've got our CEO, Eric Talkin, and we've got Lacey Baldivias. Eric has been with the Foodbank for 10 plus years and really transformed the organization, moving us from exclusively doing food distribution into nutrition education and our work in disaster relief and disaster responsiveness or preparedness. Lacey has joined us, I think it was 2 years ago, and has a PhD in nutritional biology. She oversees our community programs and education. I should have said, I am Dan Thomas. I'm the Chief Development Officer here at the Foodbank. So we have a couple of topics today, and the structure is we're going to present those topics. Both of them have to do with work we're doing right now to reach into high poverty pockets in the county where we have not really been effective in food distribution in the past. We'll have a Q&A at the end of those two topics, and the best thing to do if you have a question is just type it into the chat as we go. We'll be following the chat, and we will pull questions out of the chat when we get to the Q&A. So our first topic is going to be a program about our efforts to reach farm workers. It's Food Access for Farm Workers is the name of the program. And we'll get to that, I think, in just a moment. I think the first thing we're going to do, since we do have some newer people on the Zoom call, is we'll have Eric do a quick overview of our programs and services here at the Foodbank.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Dan. Welcome, everyone. It's really wonderful to see so many of our supporters joining us today and giving some of your valuable time. It's really appreciated. So actually, it's going to be 13 years that I have been with the Foodbank, coming up on April 15th. So hopefully not unlucky, but it has been a wonderful time. So our vision of Santa Barbara County really is of a place where everyone has enough healthy food to eat. They actually want to eat that healthy food, and they know how to quickly and simply prepare that. So it's been our approach to start with young children in preschool and then provide interactive education around food and cooking, as well as the food itself, right up until they reach high school age. So we want to build a new generation that's what we call food literate. So you're food literate when you can use food as a means of keeping healthy and you have the skills to do so, whether you have plenty of money for food that week or really very little. Now, that's our vision. Obviously, life has a way of toying with your aspirations, I think, or in the case of COVID-19, actively mocking them. So our COVID response, which will be a year old in 6 weeks from now, we really had to shift that focus immediately to concentrate on keeping food flowing to the many thousands of newly food insecure residents of our county. So I know that we've been keeping you updated on our progress. We have 2 existing warehouses, north and south, but we opened 2 new emergency warehouses. We set up 50 what we call safe food net sites where people can get food safely. And then we doubled our annual poundage, working with up to 40 National Guard members. So that has been front and center with our COVID response. But also we feel that education is too important to put aside, though. So we've really pivoted to having more online education for the whole family, as well as some exciting hybrid programs, which provide the food for lessons then that is picked up by the school. And then the actual lesson itself is provided by a community volunteer online. So the Foodbank has been focused since its inception on this combination of the food and the education around the food, working with a network of 300 plus member agencies around the county who get their food from us. Today, though, is really an opportunity for us to look at 2 new areas that are meeting urgent needs, as Dan alluded to, farm workers and school children. So Lacey, perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about our farm worker program.
Thanks, Eric. I would love to do that. Of course, during COVID-19, there was a huge need, and the food bank responded by providing food, opening up access to everyone who needed it. But the 2 programs that I wanted to tell you about today, the farm worker program first, it's really about getting food to those most vulnerable in our community that we have historically had some barriers to access for. And so the food access for farm workers, just to give you an idea of the size of this, we serve about 200 families each week, and it's on a rotating basis. It's currently situated just in Santa Maria, which is where the majority of our farm workers live. Since July, which is when we started it during the pandemic, we have served about 18,000 people. So that includes the farm worker themselves and their family members. And one of the major points of pride result of this program is we partnered with Community Health Centers, which is a healthcare organization. So we provide both our nutrition education and their COVID prevention education, as well as PPE. And as a result of this food-based program, we have reduced the transmission rate of COVID-19 among farm workers in our community from 18% down to 4%, which is incredible, right, during this time. Next slide, please, Alex. So how did we do that? Well, we had to remove the barriers. We looked at lots of different ways to get them food, but what we ultimately decided on, we first tried bringing food to the actual farm where people are working. One of the problems, though, is that farm workers tend to travel to their working location with a lot of people in one small car. And actually, through this program, we could provide as much as 50 pounds of food alongside all of the PPE equipment we're providing. That's a lot of bulk for them to carry and fit and sit on their laps in those cars. So what we ultimately did was bring this program directly to farm worker housing locations. So there's no need for them to get on a bus, potentially exposing them to other people in the public. They can walk. We host the program after working hours. So normally, obviously, the food bank operates during the daytime when we're all working, but we realize that if we don't open up the hours to later in the afternoon when people can get back from the farms, get their kids and get in line for these programs, they're not able to get the food we're providing. So hours, location, reducing barriers for transportation. And like I mentioned before, we provide education. One of the barriers is that farm workers are often speaking Mixteco languages, which is an indigenous dialect to Mexico. It's amazing that we have this in our community. It's so rich in depth and culture. So what we did was we hired peer educators. We trained them in our nutrition education. It's a curriculum that I created when I first came to the food bank. So it's all based on public health need and nutrition research. And we train those promotoras who speak Spanish and Mixteco. And then they provide the education using visual boards, using verbal communication, and also at a safe distance. So that, along with the COVID safety education, makes this a really successful program. And I think we have a few photos to share of this program in action, so you could see that we really are providing all of these amazing resources. These bags are healthcare resources. These are some of the promotoras, the peer educators. They're teaching about the USDA My Plate and how to fill your plate with plants to get a more plant-based diet. And we see a lot of families in this program. And so one thing that really stood out to me that is unique to this organization is, or I'm sorry, to this population that we serve, is we send out data collectors to do in-person interviews to collect some feedback on the foods we're providing, the services we're providing, and what this target population actually needs. And a lot of, well, about 50% of the responses that we get, I realized we're actually interviewing the child of the beneficiary. Oftentimes the beneficiary is Mixteco speaking, and so the child is able to communicate in Spanish or English with us. And one of the stories that just really stood out to me was they said, my mother and I have been out of work during the pandemic, so we've been baking bread and trying to sell it, going door to door, selling to neighbors, and that helps bring in some money. But this food, like I said, up to 50 pounds in some cases of food that we've provided allows us to have enough food for the entire household. And it sounds like maybe not a big deal, but when I look back at who is actually providing that response, that respondent was 13 years old. So that, you know, is very different from my own experience growing up in Santa Maria, where, you know, having to work at 13 years of age or work alongside your parent to help bring in enough money. I think it really shows the value of this program and what we've been able to do. So this rotates to different neighborhoods each week, and we have 4 different locations now. We provide them enough food, supplemental food, to get them through, you know, not seeing them the next week because we're visiting another neighborhood. And the next step is we're looking to expand this into Guadalupe. So we're just in discussions to how to continue to reach out to more people in our community.
Thank you, AC. I think it's a really a sad thing that the people that work so hard to put produce on our tables are not able to afford that for themselves. So it's a really important program, one that we're proud to be doing. Eric, did you have anything more you wanted to add about the Farm Workers Program?
Yeah, I'm just, you know, excited that we're doing that program. You know, obviously we're feeding over 100,000 people in Santa Barbara County, and this is really one small group, but a group that's highly in need. This is also, as well as COVID, a time of year when there's much less farming, you know, crops actually taking place and being picked. So it's naturally a fallow time as well. So there's even more challenge. So we're very excited about being able to expand this program, and really thank you for your support and being able to do that.
Well, so again, if you have questions about this program or questions on other topics that we've covered so far or we'll cover coming up, please just type them into the chat and we'll save time for Q&A at the end. But I think we'll move on now to the second program we're going to talk about, which is the Schools Initiative. And Eric, you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. So, I mean, schools and the food bank really go together so tightly. Ever since I joined the food bank, I really have been focused on how do we get the food bank into schools, because that is the right place for education and for healthy food. So we've been working hard over the years to make that happen. Now you see a list there on the screen of healthy school pantries. 9 years ago, we began the national award-winning Healthy School Pantry program. This program combines food distribution with a health fair that creates a very stimulating and supportive environment for families who can then really learn about building their food literacy as well as their food security. So we're going to be expanding these programs as well as utilizing other programs like Kids Farmers Market that provides produce and the education bill to use it. And then Teens Love Cooking, which is more of a serious cooking program that really help us build relationships both with the schools and the parents and kids who are there. So obviously the schools have been shut to in-person learning for quite a while now. And so we've been providing food boxes to those who come to the schools to pick up a free lunch or to get materials for their children's education. And when the schools return in full in-person sitting, the food bank will really be more significantly embedded in the schools than before. So we really feel this is where a lifetime of healthy nutrition can begin. But also for us, schools are a key nexus of community support when it comes to disaster preparedness. So it's our goal to increase our network of school relationships so that we can utilize schools as neighborhood distribution points in the event of a major earthquake or another disaster, and then be able to utilize community volunteers who we've provided disaster training to be able to run those programs. So our work with the schools is a very exciting part of what we do, and we really couldn't do it without your support. So thank you.
Yeah, so this is the second program that I wanted to share that really targets specific populations. I think it's 47% of the population that the food bank serves are children under the age of 18. So obviously a very significant portion of who we're serving. What we wanted to do with this program was really get these resources, like Eric mentioned, food, nutrition education, other wellness education like mental health, dental health, etc., into those neighborhoods that really need it. And the one thing I didn't mention before was also the disaster preparedness training. We want to be sure that the highest need neighborhoods do not get overlooked in terms of having access to the food kits that we produce, having the necessary training in their acceptable language from people that they trust. And so the Healthy School Pantries is really our big kind of long-term solution and aim for how to reach those most in need. So what I've listed here are our locations. We identified these by looking through the census poverty data by census tract. And so just kind of sorting the highest poverty rates and identifying those areas, and then finding the nearest school within the county. And then we do a second tier of evaluation of those schools, which is looking at their free and reduced lunch qualifications. Generally, for our Picnic in the Park program, a school would qualify for that program if they're over 50% of their students are qualified for free and reduced lunch. So in this case, some of our highest need schools are in the 75 to 85% range. So you can really get an idea of that poverty rate. As I said, we've already launched a number of these locations, and others are in development. But I wanted to share just how large some of these contributions can be. With Goleta Union School District, they're actually serving our food boxes at all 7 school sites. One of them is their actual district office location, but they've served in partnership with us 109,000 pounds of food, and about 8,200 individuals have received that food. With Santa Barbara Unified School District, we asked them to focus just on their 2 highest needs schools, so we ensure we're really getting that food to people who need it. And so with them, the numbers are a bit lower, but again, very targeted. 11,000 pounds and about 1,100 individuals served. With Santa Maria Bonita School District, as I mentioned before, we do have that farm worker program that's covering a lot of the area. And so with them, we partnered on the holiday food distributions, which covers that time when their school services, their food service would be closed for the holidays. So for that, we gave out about 2,800 pounds and served about 3,600 individuals. In Lompoc, which is another very high need area in our community, this one we have an ongoing mobile food pantry at Lompoc High School, which we're converting into the program. It's actually going to start end of February. So that will include all of that nutrition education, the boards and the languages and formatoras that I mentioned, similar to the Farmworkers Program. But so in that area, because of our longstanding relationship, we've served about 203,000 pounds of food out there.
So, Lacey, this program got a start through a grant from Feeding America, and Feeding America had a very specific way in which they wanted us to sort of approach this analysis of what were the highest need areas in the county. So talk a little bit about the process we went through in order to analyze need throughout the county.
Well, the first tier was the poverty, looking at poverty rates according to census data. As I mentioned, the second tier was looking at the schools and their free and reduced lunch. But we also took a look at disadvantaged populations. So populations of color and who particularly we could target in different areas. So examples of those would be Hispanic Latinx individuals, Black African American individuals, Native American, and also rural areas. So we did sort of a matrix of the poverty levels and then also being able to target those populations of color.
Great. All right, we do have a question in the chat. Thank you, Leslie, for your question. It's actually 2. What percentage of farm workers in our region are you able to reach? And do we have good data on how many farm workers there are in our county?
That is an excellent question, which I'm so glad you brought up, because I can definitely get that information. I don't have the total number of farm workers off the top of my head, but we could definitely get that. And then obviously
I can provide a little bit of input on that, perhaps. In California, in total, is about 800,000 farm workers. And I think in the county, obviously it's a shifting number, but it's around the 10,000 mark, I believe, maybe a little bit below or above. But that gives you a broad idea. Obviously, as a workforce, this one is extremely hard to, provide a detailed calculation on.
Did you say about 10,000 in Santa Barbara County?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we're probably around the 25% range of that if I had to estimate.
And what are we doing, Lacey, to sort of move that percentage up? I know there's a lot of work we're doing in outreach, but talk a bit about the outreach we're doing so we can let people know that the service is available.
In terms of outreach, we work with the Latinx and Mixteco Indigenous Working Group. Sorry, there's a lot of words in there, but there is a big network of people who target these individuals. And so we work with partners. As I mentioned, we provide education materials in English and Spanish. We also have Mixteco instruction, and we're always looking to expand the program. So I think we started with 3 and we moved up to 5 different locations, and now we're looking to expand into the other areas that are beyond Santa Maria, so like Guadalupe. But of course, there are some barriers to getting into new places. It takes a while, but we're just always looking to expand where we can really get into those neighborhoods.
I'll throw another question out there, and please, listeners, type some questions in for us. But on the schools initiative, we have, I think it's a total of 10 of these healthy community pantries that we want to start. There's got to be some challenges with the fact that schools are not in session right now. Talk a little bit about how you're approaching this with the schools.
Well, we work directly with the individual school principals, and most of them are very excited to be able to provide these additional resources. So we just put together a COVID safety plan. We do things like traffic control and planning how the cars can move through their parking lot to pick up the food. We do appointment planning, so not all of the recipients come at once. And then the education is live, but socially distanced while people are in their cars. And so, yeah, we think through all of the safety protocols. The schools are also, very well versed in their own safety protocols from having served school lunches. So, excuse me, it's a pretty smooth combination where we bring the normal distribution design that we use, the drive-through setting, and share it with them. And it's pretty natural to fold those together.
We have a question about what's in the boxes in terms that we are distributing. Are there any ready prepared meals?
Sometimes there have been ready prepared meals. Those don't come from us, from the food bank in particular, but I know we worked with UCSB for one of the food distributions. They were able to provide some tamales and I think beans and rice as well. But normally in our food boxes, we have a balanced blend, and we actually evaluate the blend of foods based on Feeding America's newly released nutrition guidelines. But they combine, we do provide meat, we provide dairy, eggs, cheese, sour cream, those kinds of dairy products, and then lots of fresh produce. Potatoes, I think there was celery in the photo shown, fresh fruits that we can harvest from our Backyard Bounty program. There's a huge influx of mandarins right now. So we generally do about 75%, which is in the green category, which doesn't have elevated sodium, saturated fat, or sugar. And then 25% in the yellow category, which can have a little bit of those elements, and then we aim for 0 in the red, which would have added sugars, fats, and sodium.
There's a question about Backyard Bounty, and we did put the program on a bit of a hiatus when the COVID pandemic began. We found ways to safely use volunteers in a socially distanced manner to get that program going again. So that's the answer to that. New questions popped up besides the farm workers and school programs you're discussing. It's mentioned you support many other organizations. Could you tell us about the top several organizations, who they are and who they reach? So Eric, you want to talk about our network of agencies that we work with? I think that's what we're getting at here.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. So as I alluded to, it's an incredible network of 300 plus agencies and programs. So some of those are the larger social service agencies, like the Salvation Army or the Rescue Mission, people like that who are providing direct service in terms of meals. But then we partner with a lot of schools, a lot of after-school programs to provide both the food and the education for those programs. And then some residential facilities that house low-income seniors and programs around that. So we're really focused on making sure that the food is being distributed to those who truly need it the most, and that we create relationships with our partner agencies that allow us to promote the running of programs like the ones that we have, or other nutritional education and information, so that we're not just giving people food, because we really don't want to see the same person standing in line, a year later. We really want to help people to move on to the next step. But obviously in a situation like COVID, it's been very hard to do that.
In the 10 million pounds of food we distribute in a typical year, last year though, 20 million, we're distributing food to those largest agencies, right? Catholic Charities, Unity Shop, Salvation Army, Red Cross. I mean, most of the food distributed in the county is sourced and distributed first by us. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. So I mean, the food bank is there as the central bank. Virtually all the food comes into us, whether it's fresh or whether it's from grocery stores or whether it's from out of the state. And then it's our job to make sure that we get it out as quickly as we can, both to our member agencies and then our own programs, such as mobile food pantries and mobile farmers markets that we run across the county.
We have a question about food supply. Eric, you want to just talk about how that's been going over the past year?
Sure. So this has been a continual worry for us since COVID began. It took a long time for the USDA to be able to respond with a kind of a food box program. That food box program has gone through various iterations. You may have seen newspaper articles about it, how badly organized it was, and conference companies in Texas scoring distribution contracts for food when they know absolutely nothing about it. And we're currently in what may be the final phase 5, and currently we're receiving no food from that. There's a large area of Southern California that's receiving nothing. So we're very active with our congressional representation and others to try and rectify this situation. So we've had to do a lot of purchasing of food. We purchased nearly $500,000 of food in the last few months, as well as seeking food from elsewhere in the United States in terms of donations through Feeding America or through our membership of the California Association of Food Banks, where we partner with food banks to go and get the seconds, the kind of the uglier crops from the fields, and get those out to our food banks. So it's a very broad effort that enables us to get this much food out.
Great. I do not see any other questions. Thing I will just mention is that these two we are beginning, we're grateful, first of all, for the support from all of you. These programs, Farmworkers Program, we were able to begin thanks to a grant from the California Nation of Food Banks. It's about a $400,000 program we're still fundraising for. And then the schools initiative is larger. It's about an $800,000 initiative. We got a full grant from Feeding America, the national organization we're a member of, that's off the ground with about half of that budget. But again, we're still fundraising for that. A question about our FY21 budget. How much is FY21 budget and how much is for the farm? Okay, I just mentioned how much was for the Farm Workers Program and the Healthy School Pantries Program. Our FY21 budget is about $5 million. And then are we going to partner with the Berryman anymore?
Well, we have been partnering with the Berryman in the past when they actually were a recipient of the COVID boxes and they were doing the pass-through. However, they were unsuccessful in their bid, the last 2 go-rounds of this program to actually distribute. So we're not currently partnering with them because they're not getting any food.
Question about whether our budget has gone up due to increased need, higher food costs, and reduced supply. And yes, it has. I mean, it's gone up from about 4.2 million to about 5.2 million. Is that right, Eric? Round numbers?
Yes. currently, but things may change as more money is spent on the response to COVID. I mean, we've been lucky in that we've been able to utilize the National Guard to help us, have the manpower and the woman power to be able to make this happen. But probably the National Guard will be going away in the next couple of months. And so we will be faced with this challenge of, how can we distribute twice as much food, but with the same people as we were distributing, 10 million as opposed to 20 million. So that's something that we're trying to plan for and fundraise for at the moment to really be able to make up for that. And then also bring in additional volunteers and other kind of collective volunteers. We also have a number of AmeriCorps members who've been brought in to work with the food bank. So that's helping us as well.
What see you looking ahead for the need in terms of, as the pandemic is continuing and the economic crisis seems to be continuing, what do you think looking ahead?
Sure. So, our planning in January of this year really is focusing around the prediction that the need will not be significantly decreasing for a minimum of 18 months and perhaps 24 months. And that is based on data coming from the Congressional Budget Office related to estimates around unemployment, and then also crucially underemployment. So often the food bank is working with families in need where there's plenty of work going on, plenty of jobs being worked, but that people are not earning enough money to pay for all their needs. And unfortunately, healthy food is the thing that often gets X'd from the budget first thing. So we see this need continuing. There was a large spike in need in the latter part of last year with no new stimulus arriving. And, even with the new administration's will and desire to improve nutrition programs, it's going to take a number of months for that fresh produce to be able to trickle through that program or other food. And then B, people probably saw about the more money going towards food stamps. A lot of people, earn too much money to qualify for food stamps, but are still clearly exceedingly low income and struggling to make ends meet. So there still will be the need for food bank, even with those increases in the food stamp amounts.
Eric, the COVID relief bills, what do they contain for us?
Well, there's nothing there for us currently. The only thing there is what I just touched on, which is the increased money for the SNAP or CalFresh, which is the names for food stamps. But, we are actively pursuing through the state and the federal level for more support and funding for food banks. And obviously we have received some funding through the state of California and from the governor in the past. But, we're pressing on a national level with Feeding America to really try and get more help at this time.
Anything about USDA food in the relief bills that will help us?
Not currently, no. We're at the sketchy level where we have a bunch of impressively bound executive orders that are piled up high on the desk and they get a signature. But to make that into something which is truly going to have a significant effect on people's lives takes time and effort. But there is a lot of will within the current administration. And the new Agriculture Secretary, Tom Vilsack, is somebody who has fulfilled that function before and is used to working with Feeding America and food banks.
Great. Lacey, there's a couple questions about the brown bag program. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The brown bag program is our grocery program specifically for seniors. It had previously been at congregate sites, so they would come to one location, get to talk and talk to the volunteers as well and pick up their food and go home. But during COVID, of course, that was such a high-risk population, very unsafe thing to do. So we transitioned that to home delivery. At the peak of the program, we had 3,300 individuals receiving home deliveries twice per month. So that was a huge lift on our part. So thank you for bringing that up. We're now serving the same number of individuals on the brown bag program as we were serving before during the congregate, which is about 1,100 individuals, except for now, all of the deliveries are home deliveries, so they're not coming to a congregate setting. The question, will the brown bag distribution program resume? Yes, it's possible when it's safe, but right now we're taking care of all of those individuals by having volunteers assist us in getting the food boxes to their doorsteps.
All right, I think we have conquered the slew of questions that have come in, and thank you for all those questions that led us into some wonderful areas to talk about. Want to thank you again for joining us today, and we'll be doing these in the future, and hope that you'll join us. So thank you, Lacey, thank you, Eric, and thank you to all our donors and friends who joined us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for your time.
Bye-bye.